it's Mother's Day, so I'm going to preach on something related to mothers. And each one of us have somebody we consider a mother. Could be our biological mother, but by extension, it could be an aunt, it could be an older sister, it could be a friend, somebody in your life, a teacher, or somebody in the church that is a mother. But today I'm going to focus on relating motherhood to the church and the life of the church. And I share today about an unusual mother in the Bible. She was the leader of Israel at a critical time. When you read the Old Testament, you get the impression that all the leaders of Israel were men. However, that is not the whole truth, because this woman was a leader of the whole nation, and her name is Deborah. And she called herself a mother in Israel. So my message today is titled, Deborah, a mother in Zion. I have replaced Israel with Zion to give her a role and a place in the New Testament. Deborah, a mother in Zion, or a mother in the church, a mother in the house of the Lord. Judges chapter 4, verses 4 and 5. Judges chapter 4, verses 4 and 5. And this is what it says in Judges chapter 4, verses 4 and 5. Now Deborah, a prophetess, the life of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at that time, and she would sit under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the mountains of Ephraim, and the children of Israel will come up to her for judgment. And that is how the Bible introduces her to us. And in those two verses, a few things are said about who this woman Deborah is. Her name is mentioned, and certain other things are mentioned about her. And I just want to run through them with us as we begin our message. The first is her name. Her name is Deborah. And the name could have been derived from several Hebrew words. From another root, it means a honeybee. A honeybee. And another root says to speak. So Deborah, depending on which root you are looking at, could mean a honeybee. And if that is her word, her name, then it means it denotes a wise person, an industrious person, but also a person who can fight back. And then if it is to speak, then it fits into her mission, which the Bible describes her to be. So Deborah could mean a honeybee or to speak. Now there are three descriptions that are given about Deborah in the passage. The first is her spiritual gift. Her spiritual gift. She is a prophetess. She was God's voice to the nation. And she spoke and prophesied to the nation of Israel. So her spiritual gift, she's a woman with a spiritual gift. The second you see about her is her domestic role. She was a wife, the wife of Lapidoth. So Deborah was not only a gifted woman, but she was also a person in a relationship, a wife to a man. And the man's name is put out there, although not much is heard about him after that. And then the third thing you hear or we see about Deborah is her political office. Her political office or professional role. She's a judge. She's the highest ranking citizen of Israel at this time. Now, if you know your Bible well, this is the period in Israel's time when they were ruled by judges. This is before they were ruled by kings. And Deborah is a judge. So if you would look at it in context, she's the king. She's the leader of the nation. Just like the judges like Gideon and Samson and others would come and be judges. And most of the judges were just warriors and military leaders. Only 2 judges were prophets and judges, and that is Deborah and Samuel. Samuel was the last judge of Israel, and he was a prophet and a judge. And that is about the same role that Deborah is playing. She's a prophetess and she is a judge. So she has a spiritual calling, a spiritual gift, and she also holds a political office and still function well in the house of Lapidot. So it would appear that Deborah was a woman who knew how to balance her life well. Balance her home life, balance her spiritual gift, and balance her professional role as a judge in the nation of Israel. And there are women like that in our world today, and I pray that she would be a role model to you if you are a woman. Now, Deborah occupied a very unique place. At the time she came into office, Israel was in a crisis. The Canaanites have taken over Israel. Because if you read the book of Judges, you would know that many times the children of Israel will do something bad, and then some group or the other will come to their land and invade them, and then they will cry to God, and God will raise a judge. The judge will deliver them. There will be peace for about 40 years or 70 years, and then they go back to apostasy, and then God raises a judge. So at this time, the nation has sinned. The Canaanites are ruling them and mistreating them, and this is when Deborah rises. So she rises in a time of crisis. Now I want you to consider the world that she lived in, and it's in Judges chapter 5 verses 6 to 9. Judges chapter 5 verses 6 to 9. Now in Judges chapter 5, Deborah is singing a song. This is after she had led Israel to defeat the Canaanites. But in singing the song, she tells us the kind of situation she met. So Judges chapter 5 verses 6 to 9. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, in the days of Jael, the highways were deserted, and the travelers walked along the byways. Village life ceased. It ceased in Israel until I, Deborah, arose a mother in Israel. They chose new gods. Then there was war in the gates. Not a shield or spear was seen among 40,000 in Israel. My heart is with the rulers of Israel who offered themselves willingly with the people. Bless the Lord. So Deborah is telling us the condition she came to meet. She didn't meet the best of conditions. She didn't come into office when the previous government had left a lot of money. Things were in a bad situation, and she comes into the leadership of Israel. There are 4 things I want you to pay attention to from her psalm or her poetry. The first thing is, Deborah tells us that at the time she came on the scene, there was a lot of fear. She says that the highways were deserted. Travelers walked on the byways, and the reason was because the Canaanites terrorized the travelers. So when Deborah came into office as a judge, the Canaanites had seized the roads, all the major highways of Israel by which they would go and trade with other nations. The Canaanites controlled it. So people couldn't go and purchase commodities. Businesses were collapsed. Nobody could go out. They had to use the byways. They had to use long routes to go out and do their business. And the reason was because the Canaanites had taken over the business routes of Israel. And there is so much fear in the life of the people. So that's the first thing you would notice, that there is fear in the nation and the Canaanites have taken over the trade routes. The second thing that Deborah says about her is, she says village life had ceased. That means there was despair, there was discouragement. There was no life in the communities. The towns of Israel were in disarray. There was hunger, there was deprivation. Even children could not play happily in the villages, in the towns. Village life had ceased. The elderly had stopped sitting at the city gates, which was where they would normally sit to deliberate about matters of state. Village life had ceased. So there is fear, there is despair. And the third thing, which is very serious, there is idolatry. In the midst of this, the people chose new gods. The nation is in apostasy. Spiritual decay. As a matter of fact, it is this spiritual decay that brought in the Canaanites. So there is fear, there is despair, there is idolatry, apostasy. And the fourth thing that Deborah talks about, she says that there is war in the gates. War in the gates speaks of conflicts. Conflicts close at war, at home. Now, if she said there was war in the field, it would mean that the wars they were fighting were afar off. They go out to fight. But she says there's war at the gate. That means that the Canaanites had brought the battle home to them. And not only at the gate, at the entrance of the gate, but the people themselves, the Israelites, were at war one with another. The nation is in disarray. People are fighting one another. People are destroying one another. Canaanites are fighting them, and they are fighting themselves. So this is the world of Deborah. There is fear, there is despair, there is idolatry, there is conflict. The people are fighting themselves, fighting each other. Canaanites are fighting them. And she says it is in this circumstance that God called her. So let's look at her response. Deborah said, I arose a mother in Israel. I arose a mother in Israel. In this conflict situation, in this idol worship situation, in this fearful situation, I arose as a mother in Israel. Two things there to notice about her is awareness and initiative. Deborah was aware of herself. She was aware of the situation facing the nation, and she took the initiative. I arose. I arose. She didn't sit down. She didn't add to the problem. She determined, I'm going to do something about this problem. I arose a mother in Israel.
We've come to the end of this video. We believe you've been blessed. Remember, God's love is steadfast and unchanging. May His grace and peace be with you always. If you're new here, consider subscribing to stay up to date with our videos. Kindly share this video with your friends and families. You can watch this next video on your screen.